I got an email a couple of days ago that told me the Naruto live-action teaser trailer had dropped and that it was coming to Netflix. However, as somebody who's had conversations with not only Lionsgate and the people that work there and also the soon-to-be director of the Naruto live-action, so far as I knew, the Naruto live-action story isn't only not written, but also not casted. So the idea that there was going to be a teaser trailer of any kind seemed pretty much impossible. And lo and behold, it actually was impossible because the trailer was actually posted by a YouTube channel called KH Studio that's well known for posting AI trailers of up-and-coming or anticipated movies. And the trailer was awful. One, because it was AI, and two, because who the people who are making this AI trailer decided would play some of the most important characters in Naruto was a bit absurd. Whether it was Tom Holland as Naruto, Timothée Chalamet as Sasuke, or Hiroyuki Sanada as Jiraiya, it seems as though literally the only ounce of effort that the people creating this AI trailer had to put in, which would be the fan casting aspects, they got drastically wrong. And therefore, as I was sitting there and reacting to this trailer, I started thinking to myself, well, who would play these roles? And as a Naruto live-action film being directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, the director of Shang-Chi, is currently in the works with Lionsgate, this is an incredibly pertinent time to talk about this. Because live-action adaptations like ATLA's most recent live-action adaptation and One Piece's live-action adaptation, and two, the more accurate you can get with your casting, the better the product. And thus, after I was done reacting to this abomination of a trailer, I decided that I was going to sit down and try to cast as many characters from Part 1 of Naruto as I possibly could. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I watch anime, not TV and movies. I don't know a lot of young and up-and-coming actors who could play 12-year-olds. But since it's been a while since I had to struggle to make a video, it was kind of a fun exercise in remembering what the early days of being a YouTube creator were like. And thus, when my list got to 15 characters in the Naruto universe who I believe I nailed the fan castings for, I decided I've done enough. But before we get to fan casting, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. I'm just now realizing I only did 11 characters and not 15. I have no idea where I got that number. But anyway, since there's really no correct way to start this video, I'm just gonna start with the castings that I feel the least confident about and slowly but surely make my way to the castings that I feel the most confident about. Like castings that if Destin Daniel Cretton doesn't land, genuinely it would be a hindrance to the creation of a Naruto live action film. Like legitimately perfect castings. Right age, right height, right demeanor, right acting chops, everything. So let's get started with the casting that I feel the least confident about. Now listen, a topic that we're going to talk a lot about today is what race the characters that are playing these characters within the confines of Naruto should be. This is an ongoing, incredibly pervasive conversation in the Hollywood space. Recent live-action adaptations, like the Avatar: The Last Airbender live-action adaptation, decided to go more the route of heritage actors. That is to say, since Avatar: The Last Airbender, even though it is a American production, draws a lot of its storytelling points from Asian influences, the vast, and I mean vast majority of actors within this most recent live-action adaptation were Asian. Now, Naruto is a bit different from Avatar: The Last Airbender, though. However, really in only ways that make the conversation all the more confusing. See, ATLA was an American production. It was created by Nickelodeon. It aired in America. Its original language is English, but it's fairly obvious that the story being told is a heavily influenced by Asian culture story. Naruto is kind of the exact opposite. Naruto is a story that was created in Japan, animated in Japan. Its initial language is Japanese. And while it is a story about ninjas that has tons and tons of callbacks to either Hinduism, Buddhism, or Shintoism, yes, it's a story about ninjas, which are obviously Japanese and somewhat Chinese, but those ninjas can eventually pilot 6 other bodies with the power of their Rinnegan, create Susanos, or throw meteors at each other. On top of that, this is a universe that features immortal people, shark people, people with pink hair, and therefore, while you can look at characters like Naruto and deduce what race he might be if he was put in the real world with blonde hair and blue eyes, you do have to remember that ultimately this is a Japanese story. And thus I've found, with my first foray with fan casting, it's best to assume that the majority of actors involved in this project are going to be of Asian heritage. Though that rule isn't necessarily as ironclad as it is with stories like ATLA, ironically, because there's no blonde hair, blue-eyed characters in ATLA. So this video is going to be very heavy with Asian actors. Not all of them. See, the reason that Shikamaru is coming in at our number 11 spot is because even though I genuinely believe that Shikamaru should most likely be played by an up-and-coming younger Asian actor, genuinely, best actor I can think of to play Shikamaru was Jack Dylan Grazer for his roles in both the It movies, both the Shazam movies, and in Luca. And that is quite the roster of movies to be involved in. Yeah, is Shazam 2 awful? Absolutely, but the rest of those movies are very good. And he plays a central, very important character in all of those movies. Whether that's as as Freddie Freeman in Shazam, who later becomes Captain Marvel Jr., the literal magical champion of Earth, but he also plays Eddie Kasprak in It, one of the original members of the Losers Club. And he also showed some incredibly impressive voice acting chops as Alberto in Luca, which is one of the most slept on animated movies in years. And while he is a bit old for this role, currently being 21, he has the perfect face shape and the perfect style of hair. See, well, obviously, nobody in the real world is gonna have Shikamaru's triangle pointy hairline. Jack Dylan Grazer does absolutely have enough curly hair that he'd be able to pull his hair back and have a pretty substantial and wild ponytail, like Shikamaru. On top of that, as Shikamaru is often treated as the most mature out of all of the members of the Konoha 13, I don't think Jack Dylan Grazer being a little bit older would actually be that much of an issue. Now, yes, I get it. If we're doing a Naruto live action about part 1 of Naruto, these kids are supposed to be 12 years old, which is why for the rest of this video, you're gonna try and see me abstain from people's ages who start with a 2 as hard as I can. However, unfortunately, most actors who we know the names of, ages start with 2. So do I love this casting? No. Not really, but is it the best that I could think of for Shikamaru? Yes, it is. Fortunately, the difference in confidence between 11 and 10 is massive, because coming up at number 10, we have Hinata, who I believe should be played by none other than Talia Tran. Now, Talia Tran is probably a name that a fair amount of you do not know. Her biggest, most known, and most pertinent role, on top of her most recent role, was playing Mai in the most recent live-action adaptation from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and she did a really good job in this role. Initially, I didn't love the idea of her playing Mai, but she proved me wrong. And genuinely, I do believe the reason that she was casted to play Mai in this most recent ATLA live action was because it appears as though for the majority of her life, she has had bangs. And she looks very natural with bangs, kind of like Mai. And you know who else also has bangs, especially in part 1 of Naruto? Hinata. And I don't think we talk about this enough. Hinata's haircut in part 1 is just utterly ridiculous. It's a bowl cut with 2 additional long bangs. I don't know who gave that to her, but it was cruel and unusual. But still, considering the fact that Talia Tran is currently 18 years old, showed serious acting chops in the most recent ATLA live action, and was involved as a voice actor in one of Disney's most popular recent movies, Raya and the Last Dragon, where she played Little Noi, I think that she would actually be a perfect casting for Hinata. Now, was she cast 2 years ago to play a 15-year-old Mai? Yeah. So is the idea of casting her to play a 12-year-old Hinata a bit ridiculous? Also, yeah, but I'm not really assuming that Dustin Daniel Cretton and Lionsgate are gonna go for age accuracy in Naruto. 1, kids aren't that good of actors, and 2, Naruto is an incredibly gruesome story, and while a huge talking point in the Naruto universe is the fact that there are systems put in place to make sure that children do not become soldiers, which is kind of the entire reason the Chunin exams exist, for Naruto live action to do well with a Western audience, I think genuinely the best approach would be to approach it kind of like the Maze Runner movies were approached, with 16 to 17 to 20-year-old actors depicting these younger kids in these more gruesome environments. 1, because these actors are better able to depict the action of these scenes, and 2, because even though I guess it kind of proves this point wrong, American audiences usually don't want to see kids die. But enough about these irrelevant characters, let's get to the big hitters. Because coming up at number 9, I have Sasuke. Yeah, little spoiler for the rest of this video, I'm way more confident in casting the adults than I am the children. Now, one of the reasons that we're making today's video is because the AI teaser trailer that I watched decided to cast Timothée Chalamet as Sasuke. And listen, I'm gonna come out and say it. Within the confines of that trailer, Timothée Chalamet looks good as Sasuke. He really genuinely does. And he's one of the most talented actors in all of Hollywood right now. And therefore, if Timothée Chalamet wanted to be Sasuke, I don't think anybody would complain, except for the fact that Timothée Chalamet is 28 years old. Listen, if we just want to throw age right out the window and say, hey, they're ninjas, they're gonna be as old as we want them to be, sure. Would I take the Lisan al-Gaib as Sasuke? 100%. However, it's become incredibly apparent to me over the last couple of years, as live actions have actually started to see a little bit of success, that it's less about who you cast to play these characters and more about the environment you build around said casted actors, with the best possible example of this being the One Piece live action. As by far and away, prior to the creation of this first season of the One Piece live action, the most famous actor involved in that project was Makinyu, who hails from essentially the royal family of Japanese martial arts. His uncle is Jiro Yabuki, one of the most famous Japanese actors of all time, and his father is Sony Chiba, but he was also known as the star of the Rurouni Kenshin 3 live-action movies and a couple of other more minor projects, but that made him basically the most famous actor involved in the One Piece live action. And yet, because the One Piece live action prioritized putting money into their sets and their storytelling, they were able to make what is identified as the golden standard in anime live actions. And so if Lionsgate had to shell out undoubtedly millions of dollars for Timothée Chalamet, I don't think that would be the best approach to making a successful movie. And thus I think there's really two good answers to who could possibly play Sasuke in a live action. One of which I believe is slightly better than the other simply based off the fact that they are younger. Go over my first of those two picks, the pick that I feel slightly less confident in. That would be Dallas Liu, aka Prince Zuko from the most recent Avatar: The Last Airbender live action, a role that he absolutely crushed. A role that he looked appropriately casted for. But here's the thing about Dallas. Dallas is 23, soon to be 24, and thus he was in his early 20s playing a 15-year-old Prince Zuko. It's something he was able to get away with on account of the fact of having an incredibly prolific babyface. And while the ATLA remake did come out in 2024, just last year, this means more likely than not they were probably filming somewhere in the region of 2022, maybe early 2023. And thus it's been about 3 years since he filmed in that role. And while I did say that I was trying to avoid actors whose ages started with 2, the reason I feel so confident that there could be a possibility that Dallas could be Sasuke is because Dallas has already worked with Destin Daniel Cretton, the soon-to-be director of the Naruto live action, in the past, as Dallas was actually in Shang-Chi, and directors, like most notably Christopher Nolan, tend to work with actors that they've worked with previously. However, that whole 23 going on 24 thing can't really be ignored, which is where we get the fan casting that I feel the most confident about, that Sasuke should actually be played by Charlie Bushnell, most known for his role as Luke Castellan in the most recent Percy Jackson live action. And I think that Charlie Bushnell is kind of perfect for the role of Sasuke. Not only is he very attractive, which would explain why all of the girls in the Konoha 13 keep tripping over him, but he also has the perfect pointed chin of Sasuke, he's got moosey brownish black hair, he's half Japanese, and he plays one of the main antagonists in Percy Jackson, Luke, who literally lets Kronos take over his body, which is a very close parallel to what Sasuke does with Orochimaru. On top of this, he's only 20, making him 3 whole big important years younger than Dallas. We're not done with the members of Team 7 quite yet, because coming up at number 8, we have Sakura. And Sakura is one of those characters that you can make the argument that either she should be played by a heritage actor or she should be played by a white actor. I mean, she's got green eyes after all, right? She also has pink hair, and nobody is born naturally with pink hair. Therefore, in order to avoid all Ghost in the Shell type situations, I find it best if there is quite literally any doubt whatsoever, skew on the side of a heritage actor. And thus I believe somebody who would be absolutely perfect to play Sakura would be Kyo Wentio, also known as Katara from the most recent ATLA live-action remake. Technically, Kyo Wentio is not Asian. Her heritage is that of the Mohawk Nation, which is why she was casted as Katara, since the water tribes are mostly believed to be indigenous. Kind of the beauty of casting her as Sakura. Yeah, you can sit here and argue all day long with a wall about what race Sakura should possibly be, but straight up, people just aren't born with pink hair. Sure, she's got green eyes, doesn't matter. And therefore, casting somebody of neither white or Asian heritage, I believe, would be the best possible way to cast Sakura. And Kyo Wentio as Katara is absolutely one of the bright spots in the most recent ATLA remake. On top of that, she's also been involved in other big name projects like Marvel's What If and Netflix's Anne with an E. Now, unfortunately, she doesn't have a massive forehead, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be a talking point in the live action. But it is kind of the reason I'm holding back on putting her any higher on this list. But I do like her more for this role than the AI generative trailer's choice of Daphne Keane. I mean, yes, Daphne Keane is only 20 and she is one of the most talented actresses working in Hollywood right now. She's already shown some pretty insane martial arts and stunts training in movies like Logan, but something about her in the role of Sakura does not feel right to me. But don't worry, we're not done with Team 7 yet, because coming up at number 7, we have Naruto, the child I actually feel the best about casting. See, one of the reasons I actually started thinking about casting a Naruto live action is because 2 of my friends are actually very interested in the idea of playing a live action Naruto, those being Ian Boggs and Sam Lee. Now, Ian's a YouTuber who's done some acting, and I'm sure he'd do a great job with the role, especially now that his hair is blonde. But he's also 26 years old, which I'm sorry, is just too old to play Naruto, unless, of course, once again, we're throwing age out the window. And Sam, who I would say actually probably looks younger than Ian, is actually older than Ian. He's 28. But Sam's got a slightly more impressive acting resume than Ian. Best known for most recently being one of the main characters of the incredibly underrated Netflix TV show, The Brother's Son. And unfortunately for ruling my 2 friends out because they're too old, then the 28-year-old Tom Holland is also almost definitely too old. Yeah, I get it. Everybody wants Tom Holland in every possible movie, movie, and Tom Holland and Timothée Chalamet as Naruto and Sasuke would be incredible. One, Lionsgate doesn't have the budget for that. Two, at that point, just make Sakura Zendaya and have them fight over her. And three, I think all three of those actors are too busy to act in a Naruto live action. And thus, I think there's actually two pretty good answers as to who could play Naruto in a live action. And kind of like with Sasuke, one of those answers is better simply on account of being younger. And the first of those options, and therefore technically the worst of those two options, is the 21-year-old Oaks Fegley. Now, an important aspect of all of these castings is not only their age, but also their height. And if we're moving forward to the idea that Charlie Brunell should be Sasuke, he at 5'9" should be a little bit taller than Naruto and a little bit taller than Sakura. And while Hollywood does a fantastic job of making shorter people seem taller or taller people seem shorter, I mean, the very 5'6" Tom Cruise played Jack Reacher, the very 6'7" in the books character, who's now played by the very 6'4" Alan Ritchson. That means that we should aim for Naruto and Sakura's live action castings to be shorter than 5'9". And as Oaks Fegley is 5'8", which is just actor height, they're all that size, my size, he falls under that categorization. However, if there's one problem with the idea of casting Oaks Fegley, it's one, the fact that he's 21, and two, the fact that he hasn't been involved in a movie project since 2019. However, the movies that he was involved in, mostly as a child actor, like Wonderstruck, Pete's Dragon, and Goldfinch, he was a relatively central character. And more than anything, even now, as a 21-year-old, he still has a baby face. As Naruto is the main character of this movie, and as there might be multiple movies, I find as though if you're gonna skew young with any of the actors involved in this project, it should be Naruto. And thus, I think the much better choice for the lead of the Naruto live action would actually be Walker Scobell, also known as our newest iteration of Percy Jackson. He's 16, he's got blonde curly hair and blue eyes. He's shown that he can already be the main character of a live action universe with Percy Jackson. He showed that he's able to pull off a lot of martial arts and stunt work in that very same TV show. He was also in the Netflix flop, though it wasn't his fault, The Adam Project, and is one of the more talented up-and-coming teenage actors in the industry right now. And so I think if you weren't going to cast an Asian actor for Naruto, he'd be the perfect choice. And to me, Naruto, Minato, and Ino feel like the only real clear-cut choices for the possibility of having a white actor play them. Oh, and our number 6 spot, Tsunade. Now listen, I struggled with the idea of casting Tsunade. As I stroked my beard and thought about women in their late 50s with huge honkin' bazonkas, my brain simply went to names that it shouldn't have gone to, like Alexis Texas. But my friends who have seen some of her, we'll call them movies, say that she doesn't have the acting chops to possibly ever be involved in a major motion picture. And so as I sat there talking to my chat about who could possibly play Tsunade, my brain wandered to women from Friends like Jennifer Aniston or Lisa Kudrow, women who would be in the correct age range of late 50s, early 60s. But then some incredibly wise chat member from my live stream reminded me, you wouldn't cast somebody in their late 50s, early 60s to play Tsunade. One of the biggest plot points surrounding Tsunade is that she doesn't look her age, that she actively pulls Strocker from her strength of 100 seal to make herself look youthful. And that in actuality, if you wanted to cast Tsunade in a live action movie, she would probably be played by somebody in her mid to late 20s. And my goodness, is there an actress in her mid to late 20s with blonde hair and big honkin' banankas? One of the most prolific and talented actresses working today, Sydney Sweeney, known for her roles in Euphoria, The White Lotus, The Handmaid's Tale, Madam Web, Immaculate, Anyone But You. I mean, she not only perfectly fits the vision of what a live action Tsunade would probably look like, but is also undoubtedly one of the most talented people in Hollywood right now. And while getting her involved in any kind of project is surely expensive, fortunately Tsunade isn't a massive character. And you can't tell me right now that you wouldn't want to see Sydney Sweeney cosplaying as Tsunade. I know I would. My God, I know I would. But fortunately, with Sydney Sweeney as Tsunade, we've hit a turning point in our list, where we get to talk about the adults of the Naruto universe. And in this section, Nick gets real confident about his choices, because coming up after Tsunade, we have Kakashi. And there is quite literally a million good choices to play Kakashi in live action. Now listen, I didn't hate the casting that the AI trailer had for Kakashi, as they casted Lee Jun-jae from Squid Games, the main character of Squid Games, to be Kakashi. And while I don't hate that casting, one, he doesn't really speak English. Like, yes, he learned and practiced English for his role in The Acolyte, but if you watch any interviews with him, his primary language is absolutely absolutely Korean, and 2, he's 52 years old, and while Kakashi never shows his face, and therefore he could absolutely be played by an older person, Kakashi's late 20s, early 30s in part 1 of Naruto, and thus I think he would much more appropriately be played by somebody in that age range, which leaves the door open to legitimately so many ridiculously talented actors, like the wildly talented martial artist Louis Tan, known from Deadpool and Wolverine, Cobra Kai, and maybe more importantly than anything, Mortal Kombat. And as he's 6'2" and ripped, he can play the tall, intimidating, and powerful Kakashi to a T, but he would in actuality actually be a little bit too tall to play Kakashi, as Kakashi's only about 5'11". I mean, that's obviously not the end of the world. He could always be taller. I mean, Kakashi with his hair is probably about 6'2", and him being 38 years old also isn't the end of the world, because like we just established, Kakashi spends the majority of the show with his face covered up. However, if you wanted to go for a more height accurate, also incredibly talented martial artist actor, you could cast Joe Taslim. Now, while Joe Taslim is 5 years older than Louis Tan at 43 years old, he's also 5'11", Kakashi's exact height. And he's also legitimately one of my favorite working actors. And I think legitimately one of the top 5 martial artist actors of all time. I mean, I could absolutely be skewed by the fact that I am one of the biggest Warrior fans in existence, but he is fantastic as Lee Young and was also really good as Bihan/Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat. And don't even get me started on the Raid. Anybody involved in the Raid deserves to work in Hollywood more often. But while I'd be absolutely stoked if either of these people were selected to play Kakashi, I believe genuinely the person who has the best shot at actually being Kakashi in the live action is Simu Liu. He is the correct age, 35 years old. He is the correct height, 5'11". He is ripped. He's an incredibly impressive martial artist. I mean, he was the lead in Shang-Chi, a Marvel movie. And that's kind of the most important aspect when talking about the possibility of Simu Liu being involved in the Naruto live action, because the director of Shang-Chi was Destin Daniel Cretton, the future director of the Naruto live action. And even though Kakashi is not the main character of Naruto, he is absolutely by far and away the most involved adult. And so having a big name like Simu Liu in that role, I believe, would not only be good for him as an actor, but is also highly likely as it aligns with, I would say, roughly the amount of fame that he has. Break from these adults for a second, because I forgot that there was another child on this list, because coming up at number 4, we have Rock Lee. Yeah, I feel more confident in my casting of Rock Lee than I do in literally any of the other children on this list. And why is that, you ask? Well, because I believe that Rock Lee should be played by one person and one person alone, Gordon Cormier, also known as Aang from the most recent ATLA live-action remake. Now, I get that Aang, the main character of the ATLA remake, could probably have a bigger role in the Naruto live-action. I mean, the kid was like 12 years old, like an age-accurate 12 years old when he was acting as Aang. He's only 15 now, and even as a 12-year-old, he had the acting chops to not be even remotely distracting in that remake. However, unfortunately, you slap a bowl cut on this kid and he looks just like Rock Lee. The only part of this kid that doesn't look like Rock Lee is the fact that he doesn't have Rock Lee's completely unrealistic circular eyes, but he has quite literally the perfect circular face shape to play Rock Lee. On top of that, he undoubtedly received a massive amount of stunt and martial art training on the set of ATLA. And on top of that, Rock Lee and Aang's personalities are actually pretty close to each other. Hardworking opportunists who have to bust their butts to achieve everything that they get. But when they're not busting their butts, they're silly, aloof kids who are busy simping either over Sakura or Katara. So while I would love to put him in a bigger role in the Naruto live action, I think he would be great for Rock Lee. And speaking of people who would be great for taijutsu specialists, coming up at number 3, we have Might Guy. Listen, with Might Guy, I'm going back into my warrior bag. I'm sorry, it's an entire show staffed with incredibly talented Asian martial artists. And that's kind of like with Kakashi. All of the people I'm about to mention, I would be very happy if they did end up as Might Guy, but I do have one pick that I would enjoy more than others. But let's get my secondary pick out of the way here with Jason Tobin. Now, Jason Tobin is absolutely best known for his pivotal role in Warrior as Young June, but he's also been in some other relatively big projects like Fast 9. Now, Jason Tobin, as essentially the deuteragonist of Warrior, also has to be one of the best working martial artists in the industry right now. And while his martial arts style in Warrior focuses more around the usage of blades, he is still a prolific martial artist and a phenomenal actor that I think would be able to pull off the outright silliness of Might Guy to a T. Now, unfortunately, the only real hesitancy I would have with casting him as Might Guy would be the fact that he's 49 years old. And as Might Guy is just as old as Kakashi, and therefore in part 1 of Naruto in his late 20s, early 30s, casting a 50-year-old would be a bit odd. On top of that, while he's listed as 5'10", I don't necessarily buy that. He has a more diminutive frame that doesn't necessarily make him look that large on camera. I mean, he's ripped. Don't get it twisted at all. He's a 49-year-old I wouldn't fight in a million years. But I think, unfortunately, at least for Jason Tobin, the better pick for Might Guy would be Andrew Koji, his co-star on Warrior. Andrew Koji is 5'11", and he's a big dude. And while he doesn't necessarily look like Bruce Lee, Warrior, a story which was written by Bruce Lee, mind you, is kind of a self-insert of Bruce Lee. And I don't think any actor or martial artist today does a better job of impersonating Bruce Lee's fighting style than Andrew Koji. And considering the fact that Mike Guy and Rock Lee are both based off Bruce Lee, I literally cannot imagine a better casting for Mike Guy than Andrew Koji. It ties into the fact that physically he would look about as large as Kakashi, and I think the combined forces of Simu Liu and Andrew Koji on the same screen would be peak television or movies. It's gonna be a movie, but they should make it a TV show. And while Andrew Koji does usually play a more serious role, and Boy Kills World, a movie that some of you probably haven't seen but probably should because it's a lot of fun, he plays a completely deranged and insane character who acts very differently from any other role we've ever seen Andrew Koji in. That showed me that he definitely had the silliness to possibly take on a role like Mike Guy. Since we're talking about castings that are absolutely perfect for the role that we're talking about, let's get to our number 2 spot, Killer B. Oh, Nick, we're talking about part 1 of Naruto, Killer B's not even involved. And you're right, he's not. And therefore, our number 2 here is kind of more like an honorable mention, simply based off the fact that this casting is literally perfect. But Killer B can literally be played by nobody else other than 50 Cent. I will hear no arguments, no additional castings, and I get by the end of Shippuden that Killer B is 36 years old and 50 Cent is currently 49, but 50 is ripped. He's 6 foot. He's a rapper, and he's shown in roles like The Expendables and Den of Thieves, both 1 and 2, that he's a pretty good actor. Like, is he the greatest former rapper turned actor? No, that's Ice Cube. But Ice Cube isn't huge and ripped. 50 is. You drop some blonde, slicked back dreads on him, that's Killer B. I'm hearing no other takes. But with that out of the way, we can talk about my number 1 pick, which is for none other than Hiruzen Sarutobi, as I believe that Hiruzen could be feasibly played by no one else other than Hiroyuki Sanada. Now, the AI trailer stated that Jiraiya should be played by Hiroyuki Sanada. Jiraiya is one of the tallest people in the entirety of the Naruto universe, standing at 6'4". He is a literal mountain of a man. The only people that we know of that are taller than Jiraiya are Kisame and the previous wielder of Samehada, Fubuki. And Hiroyuki Sanada is unfortunately 1, too old to play Jiraiya, and 2, 5'7". You know who's roughly 5'7" and also in their late 60s in part 1 of Naruto? Hiroyuki Sanada is 64. Hiruzen Sarutobi. And if you think there was another late 60s Asian actor who was able to pull off the grace and power of Hiruzen Sarutobi, then you are wrong. Hiroyuki Sanada has shown us time and time again in his roles in Shogun, John Wick 4, Bullet Train, that even as a 64-year-old man, he can convey strength and power, something that would be absolutely crucial in a role like Hiruzen Sarutobi, one of the most powerful men the Konoha has ever created, who now just so happens to be a little bit out of his pride. Because listen, I understand, in any piece of Japanese-leaning media, we need Hiroyuki Sanada. That's just the way that it's gone for the last decade. And thus by making him Hiruzen Sarutobi, we'd not only check that box, but also put him into what is essentially the perfect casting. Sorry, I thought I could get that video done before my haircut. Apparently, I could not. But I remembered something whilst I was getting my haircut, which is I didn't actually have 15 or 11 names to go through for my fan casting. I actually had 12. As you can see, I got confused because up here I wrote Jiraiya, but because I had so many names for Jiraiya, I just didn't even calculate him when I was counting those 11 names earlier. So since we're talking about Hiroyuki Sanada, let's talk about, I guess, what has now become our honorable mention, Jiraiya, because the AI trailer believed that Jiraiya should be played by Hiroyuki Sanada, something I disagree with emphatically. But if Hiroyuki Sanada isn't the person playing Jiraiya, then who is? Well, if you scour the internet looking for popular fan castings of Jiraiya, like I did a couple of hours ago, rather shockingly, the first name that's gonna pop up is Timothy Olyphant. You know, from Hitman or Live Free or Die Hard or Justified. And while at 56 years old, yes, he is technically in the correct age range to play Jiraiya, that's pretty much where we run out of positives. So one, because Jiraiya's character in Naruto is basically directly ripped from Jiraiya's character in the very famous Monogatari, Jiraiya the Mountain Sage, which is one of the most prolific and well-known stories in ancient Japanese literature, and therefore the idea of casting Jiraiya as a white man just doesn't feel right. And 2, because Timothy Olyphant's only 6 foot, and 3, because what about the demeanor or acting skills of Timothy Olyphant lends him to a Jiraiya-esque role? But if you were gonna go with white guys who kind of look like Timothy Olyphant, why wouldn't you just do Josh Duhamel, who looks exactly like Timothy Olyphant but is 6'4"? And while he's technically known for more rom-com roles, he's played action heroes like in the Transformers movies, where he was Captain Lennox. But any and all of those points are made irrelevant when once again we consider the fact that Jiraiya should absolutely be played by an Asian guy. Now, finding mid-50s, 6'4" Asian actors is tough, but like we said earlier, Hollywood does a really good job of making shorter people seem tall and taller people seem short. short, which is why I think the only correct answer for who should be playing Jiraiya is none other than Sung Kang. You know, Han from Fast and Furious. He's 6 foot, so 4 inches shorter than Jiraiya, but that's not the end of the world. Put him on Jiraiya's massive wooden clog shoes and he'll be 6'4". In his early 50s, like Jiraiya, usually keeps his hair longer, so the idea of him having flowing white hair won't be unsettling to anybody. As a member of like 7 of the 13 Fast and Furious movies, he's obviously very well action trained, and he can absolutely play the hell out of a womanizer because, mind you, he bags Gal Gadot in the Fast and Furious universe. But he can also play serious and stoic, like when Jiraiya gets serious in combat, because there's pretty much nobody more serious and stoic in the entirety of the Fast and Furious universe than Han. Now, do I love that casting as much as I love the idea of Hiruzen being played by Hiroyuki Sanada? No, I actually wrote a 6 next to Jiraiya's name, but I also wrote a 6 next to Tsunade's name, which I guess is kind of fitting. Now, is the idea of a 52-year-old Sung Kang simping over a 27-year-old Sydney Sweeney a bit odd? Yeah. Kind of, but that's just anime, baby. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. I know I left a lot of people out from this list, like Orochimaru and Gaara, and a lot of the members of the Konoha 13. So I'm very curious to hear what your guys' fan castings of either the characters that I've already fan casted or those characters that got left out are. So tell me about them in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Orochimaru, Bill Skarsgård, maybe?